this dress is the most difficult, most time-consuming, but most rewarding dress I have ever made. And I've only made 4 dresses.
It looks awful. That's because it's on you, dear.
Sleeping Beauty has always been a fairy tale classic. I have grew up watching the Disney version and she's my favourite character till this day. So everyone knows about the iconic blue and pink dress in the movie, but another iconic dress was her peasant dress. However, I did get inspired by the limited edition Disney doll of Aurora that came out in 2019, I think, 2020, and I just thought it was one of the most beautiful dolls out there, and I would love to recreate the dress. I didn't own the doll, so it was very difficult for me to actually look at the structure and the silhouette and how it was constructed. I did look at some images and some videos. Most of it was just me eyeballing it, but I think it worked out so well. So I wanted to recreate that. I mean, it's not a dress that a working woman at that time during the medieval period would wear. It doesn't even look, it doesn't even follow the timeline, it doesn't even follow the silhouette of the medieval period at all, because it is a fantasy, it's a fairy tale. And without further ado, in this video I documented all the footage into making this dress, so I hope you like it.
So as you can see here, it basically follows all the pattern pieces lines, except from here I tweaked it a little bit because I wanted an arch at the end. I thought Rose has an arch with her corset, and I've also added, it goes straight across like that, but I added a little arch here as well and a dip because I want to tie the lacing here. So hopefully it fits me very well and it looks nice, so I don't have to do another mock-up and I can go straight into my fashion piece.
I started off making the bodice. You guys, I can't stress enough how important it is to make a prototype. I use canvas, calico in heavyweight, and you'd want to use a material that mimics the fashion fabric. Even though it's just a mock-up, iron the fabric down. It's so important to iron the fabric down. I've seen many people that just don't do that. It's an important step because the fabric, the weft of the fabric moves, so if you iron it down, it doesn't cause any wrinkles, which can stretch the fabric, which results in a silhouette that's a little bit wonky. And once that's done, I basically stitch the pieces together.
Okay, so I just made the bodice, the toile. I think it might fit me, I'm not 100% sure. There's a little bit of pucker here, but that's because I haven't placed the boning in. I think it fits me okay. It's the correct size. Yeah. The back might need adjusting though, because it's a little bit too much fabric, which makes no sense because this is at the smallest size. I'm going to tweak it at the back a little bit, maybe cut it a bit shorter.
Once satisfied with the prototype, I use that pattern and I place it onto my main fabric and cut it out.
So I cut the bodice pattern out and I doubled it because I needed a backing fabric and the front of the fabric. I've also marked it, and now I think I'm going to interface it so it's more heavy and more structured, and yeah. I have used interfacing, which I ironed on. Interfacing adds more structure and strength to the fabric because there's only 2 layers. So yeah, I did it on one side of the fabric, which is the backing.
Another reason as to why I wanted to make this dress is not only because she's my favourite character, but I found the most beautiful fabric. It was a nice dark rose which fit her theme so well. The only problem is that it's made out of velvet, so I had to serge it in order for it to stop fraying. I placed it on a fold and I made sure that I found the perfect pattern for it before cutting it out. The back of the fabric is not made out of velvet, it's just some sort of woven fabric. However, it was slippery, so I sharpened my pencil. And sharpening pencils is so important regardless of what type of fabric that you use, so you can get a nice crisp line. To ensure that the pencil doesn't smudge off, I tacked all the way around, including the centre. Next, it was time to sew everything. I was so nervous sewing everything, but I wanted to get it done. I get so nervous sewing the main fabric because I always think to myself, oh, is it going to look nice? It does, just have faith in yourself. I made sure that the lining fabric and the outer fabric match together at the seams so that it's symmetrical once sewn. People use words on their fabric that can be easily rubbed off, like centre back and centre front, but what I find the easiest way for me is just numbering it all, so I know that number 1 attaches to number 2. I made a deal with myself. I said to myself that in all of the garments that I ever make, I am going to do some embroidery, because embroidery is my specialism. It's something that I am very good at. It's one of my strengths in comparison to construction. So I wanted to make sure that I embroidered also the bodice and not just the skirt. I chosen flowers because obviously she's a princess. It's time to add structure to the bodice, which is inserting boning channels. But just before that, I sewn in some tape to use as the channels so I can insert the boning in. I knew I wanted to make a petticoat. It's not exactly an important step, it's just more for protection. I used netting and I added bias binding tape on the very top, sewn a straight stitch and threaded through an elastic band to my waist measurement so it's able to stretch. The great thing about this is that I'm able to use this petticoat for future projects. I found some elastic that's the perfect size for my skirt. Quite a popular brand actually, Hemline, and it's actually for face masks, but I think it would work perfectly for my petticoat. Using the same brand, I'm going to use safety pins to thread it through my petticoat, the smallest one. So in Aurora's original garment, she wears this collared shirt, but on the Disney dolls, she wears this sort of chemise looking dress. And it reminded me of the Marie Antoinette chemise à la reine dress, which is something that I wanted to recreate. So I went out and bought the lightest weight cotton. However, it was still too stiff and it didn't drape very well, so I bought chiffon instead. Let me tell you, chiffon has to be the hardest and most difficult fabric I have ever worked with. And I've worked with many fabrics, structured ones like coutil. The reason why chiffon was hard to work with is because it's the complete opposite. It's a very sheer and lightweight fabric, which is very, very slippery. It was hard to pin down, hard to match up, hard to make it symmetrical. However, I did persevere and I just managed to make it work. It may not be symmetrical, but it's going to be worn underneath the corset. I have never made a chemise before, so I just had to look it up. For the width, I just used the whole amount of fabric that I bought, and for the length I made it 68 centimeters. So it's just short enough that you can't see it once all of the petticoats are on top, but long enough that it just covers some of the petticoats and basically keeps it protected The sleeves are just rectangles, and you have to make sure you cut out 4 triangles so that you're able to have some movement in the arms. The top part, I gathered it, so I didn't really care how long it was because it was going to make a beautiful ruffle look once gathered anyways. And the last thing to do is just sandwich it all together and sew it all the way around, leaving the bottom part completely open. Make sure to hem it. I did want to add a bit of structure to the chemise because it was just so flowy, so I added tape on the armholes around about the elbow area, which is here. And what that would do is once the corset is on, it kind of gathers it, the corset kind of catches it, and it will give a nice puff look without me having to add, you know, string underneath and tie it up like you would do in a regular chemise à la reine. Because this is not exactly a chemise à la reine, it is inspired.
And it'll get cinched like that, and you won't even be able to see it because it'll be under, so it'll look like a clean finish. Thinking I have some spare lace, and I think it would look really nice at the bottom. So yeah, I've just hemmed it. You can see I'm going to hem it again like that, so it'll be a clean finish on both sides. But I'm going to add some lacing to it, and I think that would make it look very romantic, and it will correspond with the skirt because the skirt has the exact same lacing. Trying my best to show it here. This is the chemise. I did 2 layers, and it's folded together like a sandwich. And what I'm going to do is overlock the edge, which is I'm going to overlock it in the inside so it looks clean on the outside. And I know it looks really, really large considering that it's off the shoulder, but this will be gathered and it'll give that nice ruffle look. The next thing I'm going to do is hem it at the bottom, so I'm going to fold it again and do a straight stitch. I would usually hand stitch it when it comes to hemming, but this is so sheer I wouldn't be able to grab onto anything, so I'm going to use machine stitch for that. I found some lace detailing, and it's already hemmed, as you can see, and I'm thinking of attaching it at the top all the way around. It kind of matches the sleeves as well.
The reason why I chose chiffon is because it was the perfect fabric for what I would, you know, vision a princess in the field with a flowy dress. The movement was just beautiful, so yeah, I had to do it. I just had to do it. Okay, so I don't really prototype skirts, especially circle skirts and panel skirts, which is something that I usually work with, but this skirt has a lot of movement and a lot of structure to it, so naturally I had to make a prototype, and I only made one because it worked out very, very well. As you can see on the doll, the one part of the skirt completely descends, so it's a different length to the other. I wanted it to fold perfectly, so yes, I had to make a prototype, which is fine. You want to use fabric that's very similar to your main fabric. I'm going to use calico, and I have different weights for it. And there's even fabric that's perfect for shawls. I'm going to use heavyweight, and you're going to watch me drape it on the stand. As you can see in this clip, I'm using my mannequin Nora, and I'm attaching the fabric using pins and creating pleatings, which you can see on the doll. Just finished cutting the skirt at the bottom part because the doll skirt is a lot shorter, so I did the same. So I want to show you guys, and yeah, I think it turned out pretty well, to be honest. Yeah, I know it goes across at an angle like that. I've already marked it and drew it everywhere. I put little darts as well and points so I know when to fold it, so it creates the exact same pleat on the stand as it would when I lay it flat.
Also added a seam allowance on the top part, the sides, and the bottom part, because just in case if I wanted it to be shorter or longer. So the doll's skirt sticks out to the sides like a ball gown actually, and because it's a doll, it's not going to be heavy, so it's able to stick out, but mine's life size. So I'm going to add some boning on each side, and maybe horsehair boning at the bottom so it poofs out a little bit. But I forgot to show you the fabric that I'm using. So I looked at this and this is the exact same colour that I wanted, but then I saw this one and I just love it. Look, it's so shiny and pretty. And this is the top skirt. Usually she's wearing a pink top skirt, but in the original film she wears a purple or grey top skirt, and I want to add a bit of original look to it, so I'm going to keep the top skirt and I'm going to embroider that. So where we last left off, I bought some black bias binding tape. I'm going to sandwich it together and do a straight stitch and do the exact same on the bottom part of the bodice. I've also bought some stronger boning for the ends, and you're going to need stronger boning for that because it requires a lot of stretching and tension with the tightening. Anyways, let me show you how I do it. I just wanted to explain something real quick, is that I overlocked the ends and I'm going to put that end boning channel right on the edge here, and then fold it and then sew a straight stitch. And this is because usually I'd cover this up, but this is because if I were to sell this garment in the future and the wearer is a little bit bigger than me, I can adjust it and unpick it and resize it to her or his size. A lot of pins here and I know that, but the reason why is that I want to match the boning channels to all the seams, that way it's symmetrical when I sew the bias binding tape on top. I do not like eyelets at all. I just think that it doesn't look nice from the back. I think it looks a little bit ugly, but each to their own. This is just my personal preference. However, it is very strong in comparison to other types of fastenings, so I understand that. So I decided to use some tape and I sewn it on the inside of the bodice. I used pins in order to mark it and made sure that it was symmetrical on both sides of the pattern pieces. I think it worked out very well. I wanted to neaten the inside up a little bit, so the serge edge I folded it and did a herringbone stitch. I know you can't see it because it's on the inside, but I don't know, I want to get better at my sewing and I want to be more professional, so you know, it's the small things that I should really consider as well, not just the big things. For the shawl, I picked out a beautiful champagne coloured Duchess satin. I think I bought like 2 meters of it, and I cut it into like a diamond shape. Some sort of, it's like a rectangle and then it goes down to look like a diamond. And I've cut 2 of those out and then I'll sandwich them together. But before I did that, of course, I had to embroider it. So I went with a classic Disney font of Sleeping Beauty because it is her dress. I chose a thread, I think it was lighter or maybe darker than the Champagne Duchess satin that I used, which gave a very, you know, subtle look, which was perfect because I didn't want it to completely take away from the dress. However, if someone were to see that dress in person and came close, they're able to see the detailing of that work, which is, you know, goes into conspicuous consumption. She is a princess after all. You'd think the final skirt that is heavily embroidered is my favourite part of this garment, but it's not, it's the shawls. I love the tassels at the end and the font that I created.
I didn't really exactly create, but I eyeballed it. I didn't use any tracing paper. I just measured it using rulers and just winged it, hope for the best, and I think it came out very lovely. So while I'm leaving this skirt to stretch, I'm finishing off my shawl. I just need to do a straight stitch on the long side of the edge of this fabric, which includes the other side as well. And I'm leaving the points, this bit, I'm going to do a straight stitch all the way, but I'm only leaving a little bit open so I can bag it out and iron it flat before I add my tassels in. The tassels will hang right at the end, but it'll be sewn on the inside. I'm going to hand stitch the final bits together. Hopefully it should come together professionally. Sewn it and I flipped it inside out. So I've never worked with horsehair before. It's a material that I didn't even know existed, and let me tell you, it's the holy grail because people use it to hem skirts. It's great to add volume and prevent skirts from collapsing. This is what it looks like. It's quite a flexible material, stretchy as well, so it's able to adjust to different skirts lengths. It works very well for like woven fabrics as well. Mine's 5 centimeters because my skirt is massive. It's quite a big skirt. It's nearly a ball gown. Bought around about how many meters? 10 meters of this, and it was only like £7, so it's quite a cheap material to use. I will be using this in the future because I love it so much. Difficult to explain, but I'll do my very best on explaining how I want to do the back of the skirt. Now I found some extra long pieces of calico that I don't really care about, and I'm going to use it as a toile for the back of the skirt. And right now I'm just measuring each side of the front of the skirt, the length all the way down. I'm going to measure right to the end here, and I'm going to mark it, and I'll do exactly the same on the other side. And then for it to be even longer at the back and there's a train, I'm going to continue drawing a nice little circle, like a half a moon, till it gets to the other end, and I'm going to mark it. And I'm going to cut all of that out, and that will be the back of the skirt. This part of the skirt will obviously align with the correct measurements because I've measured each side and the length, and I don't mind to have extra fabric. In fact, I actually wanted extra fabric, so I'm just going to pull it a little bit and then measure like that. And this is going to be gathered, and this is going to give a nice gathered look, and it'll add more volume to the back of the skirt on top of that. So how this second skirt is going to be attached, I had no idea, because I know the top of the skirt is going to have a waistband and a zip, but the second skirt, I wanted it to be a little bit more adjustable. So what I did was look back at my inspiration, which is the chemise, and I thought of Marie Antoinette. And for the petticoats, you know, they had the pocket petticoats where it's sewn together at the sides, and then at the top there's strings attached, so you can attach it on the waist and you are able to adjust it To see the final making of the toile and how it came to life, and the fact that it all of it came into my head and I envisioned it. I didn't expect it to actually look like how I envisioned it, but it did, and it was something I was so proud of, and it felt so real, and I was getting so excited because I was closer to finishing this project.
So what I basically done is I've sewn the horsehair onto the lining of the fabric because I don't like the fact that the horsehair shows through the main fabric like that. I don't like it, especially when I'm toiling around. So I'm going to sandwich this together. But before I do that, I've just gathered some ruffles, the same ruffles that I use for my chemise, and I'm going to gather it and I'm going to attach it all the way towards the end of the skirt before I sew everything together and then start folding it and tacking it like I did with my toile. Obviously this will be put down like here, so it'll be like that, and then this will be folded, and then I'm doing a straight stitch so it's all clean in both ends. Of a bias binding tape and white cotton. I'm just going to sew this together so it adds strength.
For the final top skirt, I use the exact same pattern that I used for the second skirt, but I cut it a little bit shorter. So I replaced it on the stand and cut it probably about 7 centimeters shorter, and then I laid it out and placed it onto the purple fabric and cut it out. I did the exact same steps basically. So once the fashion fabric is cut out, there is a little bit of extra steps, and the only reason is because this is the top skirt and it's going to be heavily embroidered. So in order for it to match up perfectly at the seams and at the sides and even at the pleats, I use balance marks. Yes, I use balance mark on a skirt and I tacked it. And that's because once you put it onto the stand, the mannequin or the model, and you look back, you want it to look like a one continuous fold. And that's the reason why I put balance mark, which was a genius idea. So the balance marks are attached together at the seams, pinned, sewn a straight stitch, so once it's open, it's completely symmetrical. Just before I attached my lining, I did my embroidery on the skirt. You want to do that first because there's always a uglier side to the embroidery, and the lining fabric will cover that once done. I used a sharp pencil, a white pencil so you can see, on the skirt. Before I went with my embroidery, I just completely freestyled it. And the idea was that, you know, it's a woodland dress. She's out in the meadows and she sits down and all the flowers imprinted onto her skirt, which was just, sounds so romantic and magical. I also wanted to add some 3D elements to the embroidery. So I had loads of buttons that I've always wanted to use and I never used it, so this was the perfect time. It came in all different colours, so the red for the holly, the black for the sunflower, and I also used some beads, so you would call these as embellishments. So I used it as just little sparkles, or I did it for the dandelion when it was blown away, and that gave it a bit of pop. Embroidery took so long. I think I spent nearly 2 weeks just embroidering all day, every day. Like, it is my specialism, it is something that I'm really good at, but I just put on the TV or like mostly podcasts and documentaries because I like to educate myself while embroidery. I can't exactly watch like playthroughs because I'll have to look up. But yeah, I think the bee took the longest to do. And I also did different types of techniques of embroidery. So I did the chain stitch for one of the leaves, and I did like, I twined the thread around my finger, took it out, and then I just stamped it across using a straight stitch. Yeah, so I'm quite proud of myself. I use loads of different techniques. I still wanted to implement a little bit of that bodice, especially I had so much left of that beautiful velvet rose fabric, so I made a motif. I cut out the rose, I put interfacing so it stops from fraying, but I also blanket stitched around it using hand stitching just to make sure that it doesn't fray 100% before stitching it onto the skirt, and it looked so well, it corresponds so well. I wanted to add all of like flower elements that I can think of and the amount that I can put onto the skirt. So I drew daisies, I drew dandelions, I even added animals like little butterflies and bees, and obviously I added the sunflower, which is my favourite flower. She's right in the side, I think, and she's the star of the show, obviously. Now, it would be easier for me to serge or overlock the edges, but unfortunately I didn't bring my overlocker when I moved into my new flat, so I just did a zigzag stitch instead. If it's a curved seam, make sure to clip into it because it releases tension, so it adds more movement. When a fabric is a bit too tense, it won't move. So clipping the seams a little bit, not to the point that you end up clipping through the stitches, but clipping the seams a little bit will just make it a little bit more less tense. I used a piping foot to stitch the zipper on. And I know that's not the right way because you do have a zipper foot for it, but I bought loads of foot and the zipper foot never turned up for some reason, so the piping foot was the best thing that I can use. It worked out well, it still did the same thing once it's sewn together and zipped up, you can't exactly see the seams. And to attach the waistband together, I used hook and eye closures. I always document everything that I do to prevent me from forgetting, but unfortunately I cannot find the final making of this skirt on my files. So the best thing I can do is just talk you through it. It's quite simple really. I just added a invisible zipper at the back and added a waistband. The skirt is quite heavy. It has horsehair, it has lining and a plethora of different types of embroidery. So I added petersham to the waistband for strength, and for the waistband itself, I just basically made a bias binding cut of the final skirt fabric. You know, I put my blood, sweat and tears, and when I mean I put my blood, I literally mean that, because the amount of times I have pricked my finger, my hands from all this sewing. Yeah, and that's practically it, you guys. This dress is finally complete, and I'm excited to show you guys. I hope you guys like it.